All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We've got a good one in the house on how to grow a nonprofit brand from almost scratch. My name's Adam. This is Nonprofit Growth Lab, sponsored by Good United, where we like to come out, hang out, usually once every couple of weeks, and take some time to learn how to be better fundraisers, how to be better nonprofit professionals through a whole gamut of things. Usually our spin is looking at the digital marketing aspect of things. So cool. Let's get moving. As people are getting in, let's just give a quick agenda here. As a reminder, as always, this will be recorded. It'll actually be on demand this afternoon. You can find that on LinkedIn, and we'll have it posted on our website tomorrow. So you get access to this if you have to bail at any point, or if you find that you need to send this along to a colleague, or for whatever reason, it's there really quick. We've done a really good job at trying to make sure we get that up as fast as possible, as this is now, I think, month 7 or 8 of doing this. I'm really excited about today. Coming a couple of different things. We'll lead off with a couple minutes on the M&R benchmarks reports, specifically focusing on email and then social media and fundraising. There's a lot of interesting stats that came out of that last week. If you are unfamiliar with that, we'll cover what that is, what the benchmark report is, how it impacts moving forward in 2023, thinking about the benchmarks that were set in 2022. Then I'll tag in Amie and I'll introduce her in a few moments, but absolutely fantastic individual. I love talking with her every time. I leave so energized and pumped about fundraising and the different things going on, the mission that she has supported over her career. And then we'll leave you all with kind of next steps on how you can take what Amie and I have learned through the joys and pains and process of understanding how to cultivate and grow a brand and apply that to your everyday lives starting today if you wanted to. All right, cool. With me, I have both Rachel and Courtney sitting across from me. So if you hear me, ask them to help me in the comments. And we've got that going on. We've got a couple people manning those. So if you have any questions, drop it in. I'll do my best to catch those in real time. All right. I think we're good to go. Let's get moving. Okay. Before we do that, Rachel, if you wouldn't mind dropping in some of the registration links. Upcoming events, we actually have this planned out through the end of Q3 somehow for Nonprofit Growth Lab, as well as a whole bunch of other related digital events. I'm really excited about next week's Fundraising Heroes event, where we're talking to Colorectal Cancer Alliance and their team about some of the cool victories they've seen in terms of growing quick revenue and leads through Facebook Messenger outside of a Facebook challenge. So something a little bit more different than what most organizations associate Facebook fundraising with. We've got Fundraising Bootcamp, which our last Nonprofit Growth Lab, a lot of people were like, what in the world is going on with our fundraising revenue? How do we fix that? How do we even start to poke the bear that is Facebook fundraising for a lot of smaller nonprofits that are trying to get stood up? So we're dedicating a whole hour. I've got a whole bunch of teammates joining me for that. We'll walk through everything from how to sign up for Facebook giving tools all the way through what you need to know at a high level, granted, about running Facebook challenges, how to treat and approach birthday fundraisers, and nonprofit manager, the tools, native tools that Facebook gives to all nonprofits who are approved for fundraising on Facebook. Then we get into some fun stuff a little bit later, midsummer. We have the giving block returning. We have the other CEO, Pat, joining me. I'm really excited about this, as crypto is always something that everyone just always wants more questions, more understanding how to best really harness what is widely a still unknown quantity in terms of how do I grow that and how does that play a big part in my fundraising portfolio. And then as we push out more towards the end of the summer, we've got a really cool roundtable set up with digital fundraising leaders, as well as we'll do another boot camp around Facebook challenges. If you were with us back in October, we did a really fantastic kind of teardown of 3 different challenges that were submitted by nonprofits. Really helpful. A lot of cool stuff came out of that. Ultimately, we were able to provide some really great instant do this, do that kind of feedback that would help improve how those are run. So, okay, I'm excited for that stuff. Let's get on to the M&R benchmark reports. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with what this is, now this is my second year reading through this, being at Good United. It is effectively benchmarks. This year, it was about 215 different nonprofits that worked with M&R to basically provide benchmarks across digital marketing. And that ranged for everywhere from emails to ad spend to, as you'll see in the next slides, Facebook, right? A lot of not surprising stuff overall, down across the board. Fundraising is going down, which I don't think anyone is surprising, which is a stark contrast to everyone's goals to hit fundraising going up, which is bad. You take a look at some of the stats that we pulled directly from the M&R report right here. Email is trending down. I think people are sending an average of roughly 1,000 emails just to garner $90 in fundraising revenue, which is staggering if you think about, yes, automated, but like how many messages, what's going on behind the scenes to say, hey, it takes that many messages in order to get $90, right? More unsurprising, at least if you're following the Facebook fundraising trends, as you shift to the Facebook aspect of things, 35% nosedive year over year for these 215 organizations from 2022 or from 21 to 22. There's a lot of things that go into this. One of the things that our team called out, and specifically, we have a blog post that we posted this week that some of my teammates were gracious enough to help me provide some thoughts and some analysis on this. This report didn't really make any use of calling out, is this challenge related? Is this birthday fundraiser related? How is this coming in? So there's some question marks around that, but overall, we'll take this as a litmus. It's nothing that we all don't know or didn't know. Another thing that's interesting here is it's only 1% of everyone's, the 215 organizations, nonprofits, total revenue came from Facebook. You think that in stark contrast, again, to the sheer amount of people, now granted, 2.3 billion people are not going to be all supporting your mission. I get that. I think everyone can kind of grasp that idea. But for such a massive amount of, we'll say, organic exposure that your brand could have, which plays directly into what Amie and I will be talking about throughout the course of the next probably 30, 40 minutes. How is that even a thing? And, I sat down with Nick, our co-founder, today, and he got super passionate about this particular aspect. It's, with 2.x amount of billion people on Facebook, people are spending almost an hour and a half of time a day on social media. I personally don't. I have a 2 and a 5-year-old that keep me way too busy. But across the average of that, that's crazy, right? And nonprofits average, and they're spending time on at least one post a day on Facebook. Now, this is straight out of M&R. So this is, again, 215 organizations. We'll extrapolate that and say maybe the average and median is somewhere between 0.5 to 2, give or take. But either way, the bottom line here is that everyone's taking the time and putting the effort into having a presence online. But at the end of the day, here's what we were thinking this morning as we're thinking about this, as a couple of us in the room, is the hypothesis that we're so focused on taking people out of channel. Nonprofits are spending an incredible amount of money on ads on Facebook only to take them out and push them to the website, their website, to landing pages, to different aspects that are anywhere but in channel. Why are we forcing individuals who we're communicating to in a channel like Facebook to give somewhere else, right? Reducing the friction. As a marketing professional, I had to learn the hard way over years and years of trial and error and getting my butt kicked more than one time, is that if you want to go for conversion and ultimately drive revenue, you got to think about what's best for your customer or your supporter from that aspect. So I'll go off my soapbox. That's something that just really resonated with all of us today and through the last couple of days as well. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop my good old slide deck here. I'm going to bring Amie to the stage. And Amie, let me get this there we go. Amie, welcome.
Hi. Thank you for having me today.
Yeah, absolutely. And for everyone who's joining on us, I'm Amie. There we go. I was just absolutely loved our conversation. I left with so much energy and so much just thinking about how we could positively make moves around. You've done such an amazing job in your career, and I have my notes here. British Columbia, Canada.
Sorry, Adam, I seem to be, the stream has paused for me. I am not hearing anything.
Okay, we're back.
Here we are. Hi.
Good internet. All right. So, what I was saying, in case I didn't catch it, you and I have had a couple conversations over the last couple of months. You're based out of British Columbia, Canada. You cut through with Hagar International, originally in comms, and then you've led brand and marketing for various organizations such as 10,000 Windows, Everfree, which I believe y'all ended up merging, is if I remember correctly the story. And ultimately, you just rejoined or came back home, if you will, to Hagar USA to do ultimately what we're going to be talking about today. And you're now the director of fundraising and comms. Back again.
One of those days, eh?
Yeah. I know. Gotta love our internet connection here. Okay, so long story short, you've done such a storied and phenomenal job with various different nonprofits regarding brand, as well as communications, which plays such a vital role in growing really a nonprofit. Sometimes from scratch, sometimes you take over the existing ship, and sometimes you just have to keep things steady pace. I'm going to pause here. Now, I went through a lot of highlights. What I'm really curious is you have education specifically around a lot of these career arcs for yourself. I'd love to understand what got you into the PR or the comms aspect, the brand aspect, and journalism specifically, if I remember correctly. And how did that evolve into where we're at now?
Yeah, so I do have a journalism degree, and it was this desire to find and tell stories that matter that was my initial jump into journalism for my BA. And after graduating from college, I don't know, the typical news agency in North America really didn't carry much appeal for me. And really my dive into anti-trafficking work started the day that my husband and I packed up all of our apartment in Canada, got on an airplane, and we flew to Cambodia, where he had lined up a 1-year job in engineering. So he's an engineer. He had lined up a job, and I figured I'd just be this trailing spouse. You know, I'd go and hopefully find something and be able to, you know, write stories, and, you know, maybe the New York Times would pick it up, you know, or something like that. That was my dream, you know, in my early 20s. And we got to Cambodia, and this was in the mid 2000s, and it changed our lives, changed my life. That's when I came face to face, was confronted with this incredibly challenging reality that women, just like myself, kids like my own, now I have 3 daughters, are sold, are exploited, are trafficked for someone else's gain. And when I was introduced to Hagar's work, I'm not sure I could ever remain the same. And you see all these individuals who have experienced just intense and egregious human rights violations, and experience over time through holistic support this incredible transformation, that they do find healing, that they are able to thrive and flourish. And I wanted my own life story to support those efforts. I wanted to give back. I come from an extremely privileged background, middle class, educated, healthy family dynamics, and I don't want to end up at the end of my life not having supported the thriving and the flourishing of others. And so that's how I got involved in anti-trafficking. And the communications work was a natural outflow. It's ultimately storytelling. And it's telling stories that are happening on the field, stories of transformation and hardship, and trying to, you know, communicate with persuasion to convince this audience of people to care. And so it's been a great, great privilege, just a very natural way for me to utilize my education in my career. And then also sort of being thrown into the deep end, because communications and marketing and fundraising, they do all end up relating to each other. And so I've certainly had to learn as I go and upgrade skills and trial by error and baptism by fire and all of that. So
yeah, it's crazy the work that Hagar and you've done with a couple other organizations too as well. I moved to my wife and I have been all over the U.S. it feels like, but when we moved to just outside of Tampa, Florida, I had no idea how prevalent this issue was, and as being Miami, and just outside of where we're in Sarasota, but like all up that West Coast is a big issue. And even here in Charleston, we're working with a few of the smaller nonprofits with a similar mission. It's a big issue. It's one of those things you don't think of. When I just moved to Charleston maybe 6-7 months ago, I think, give or take. I had no idea. You would never know it. So the work that y'all are doing is so incredibly vital. And so thank you for that. I know having a daughter and now a small son myself too, it hits even more. As you said, you have 3 daughters, like that hits home to have that as a stark reality of what we all have to deal with now. So from there, when you're looking at kind of you've done a lot of great things, experienced a lot of cool things. You know, not everyone gets to experience nonprofits merging like you did. Let's start there, and then we'll get into the Hagar stuff too. After that, from that perspective, can you walk me through where you were, what you were doing at that point? And I believe this was 10,000 Windows. And then what was that process from a brand perspective of having to merge with an existing nonprofit brand and how to come together? You think about voice, the style brands, the guides, everything that goes along with that. But the fundamental aspect is how do you bring awareness of what's going on in the new identity and help to coach people through and help understand and tie, hey, oh, they're this brand. This is what they do. That's a lot. Take me through that steps of like what you were doing, and then when that happened, and then the challenges and the triumphs that you saw post that merger.
Sure. Yeah. So I did work with 10,000 Windows for about 4 years, and it was in the last year and a half, the past year and a half, where 10,000 Windows and Willow International decided to join forces and merge together. And one of the very positive elements of that is you bring two organizations together in a rename, so it became Everfree, and an expanded mission. So it wasn't just Willow's work, and it wasn't just 10,000 Windows work any longer. It was Everfree's expanded mission to bring aftercare within reach of every survivor in the world. And so, I mean, we, in many ways, that process, we were able to take the remarkable language and messaging from each organization, but also like birth. It was birthing something completely new. Everfree has a really beautiful brand. It's a really gorgeous brand, and we worked with like our internal team and our program offices, as well as a very talented designer, to bring that brand to life, to be able to capture where Everfree was headed, and where it still is headed. There are challenges. 10,000 Windows had a really particular donor demographic and audience. Willow's audience was quite different, and there wasn't a whole lot of overlap. And so being able to convey this exciting story, but in language that would work for both of the audiences, that was certainly a challenge. What we ended up doing was keeping the historic organizations' websites, and having some of that consistent messaging online, both on the Everfree site, the 10,000 Windows site, and the Willow site, just over time. It's still there, so that's reinforcing that brand identity, is that Everfree is the product of this merge, between these two organizations. And And now it's beginning to take a life on of its own.
That's great. It's not unsimilar to what I've gone through on the B2B side. So I've been through the merger where I was the organization I was working with was acquired by a larger company, and the challenges and then the timelines seem to go on and drag on forever because there was always the question of understanding how does this smaller organization fit in this reimagined portfolio. It was, what is the customers, in this case for us, or in this case for you, your supporters and your donors, what is that bridge that needs to be done? For us, that was a lot of getting on the phone, calling existing customers, asking the right questions for us to people who are interested in, for us, purchasing our what we are offering, and understanding the pain points, how we were portrayed, were we talking about the right things? Were we now looking at a different demographic and segmentation? So like, I'm always bringing this up, but it's so critical to my experience and understanding and delivering the right message and the right value to the right people, instead of, what we refer to as spraying and praying. Sometimes you think about sending that large email out to 1 billion different people, hoping that one will click, instead of taking time to craft that killer email that hits the pain points or hits the exact things that are for a very specific part of people, right? That took, a year and a half. It was unreal. And amidst that, we were also doing a total full-on rebrand of the parent company that got looped into. So we're relaunching all of this thing. I would not recommend that. And I think some of your takeaways we'll touch on that. But we just did it with Good United. For those of you who were unfamiliar of what Good United looked like, get me in the comments, or after this, I'll walk you through the different stages of the brand and how it's evolved. But the same process. We talked to both internal and external individuals who helped give us understanding of who we were, where we were at, and then where we're going next. So if you take anything from this, it's go talk to people. They'll give you, just shut up and listen. They'll give you the best ideas and understanding of how to avoid a lot of heartache. That's so great. And then Amie, so moving on to Hagar, there's two kind of chapters of your Hagar life. There was initially with the international side of things, where I believe you spent close to almost 6 years, give or take a few months. And then you just came back on with the USA chapter, which is, I think, the smaller regional based aspect of that larger parent company. What are the differences between the international stint and now the USA stint? Is that same thing you're dealing with, you're looking to improve, or is this two drastically different organizations, two drastically different outcomes? What does that look like for you today?
So it is essentially, it's the same organization. It's the same mission. So Hagar's global mission is to see communities free and healed from the trauma of trafficking, slavery, and abuse, regardless of where you are in the world. That is Hagar's mission. And yet, because of different countries, operating laws, the IRS, whatever those complements are in other countries around the world, Hagar is registered as its own entity in the US. That enables us to provide tax receipts, for US donors who want to support this work. Working at Hagar in the international office, which was then based in Phnom Penh in Cambodia, was a really remarkable experience. You're having sourcing stories and creating content when you are on the field provides you a completely different perspective than trying to do the same, but based in my home office here in BC. It's a totally different experience. There's a sense of color. There's a sense of the essence of the story. And yet there are challenges too. And trying to, by the time that we were ready to leave Cambodia, we were tired. We'd been living in Cambodia with all of its dangers and idiosyncrasies and challenges for 6 years. We had 2 small kids, so we were ready to go. And being based now out of the US office gives me the remarkable opportunity to actually interface in person with donors. We've opened up the capacity for Canadians as well to donate to Hagar's work with tax receipts. And that was always one of my biggest dreams, working far, far away from Canada, giving giving people in my own network, my family and friends, giving Canadians as a whole a chance to contribute to this work. And what you just said about, the merger that you went through and the value in just talking to people, that is the beauty now of working in a regional office where I'm interfacing and connecting with real people, hearing what makes them excited about this work. And that's a little bit easier when we're based in the same hemisphere, when some of those cultural things overlap. So it's in many ways a very similar experience now, being on the US side of Hagar, same mission, and that's what's so powerful about it. But it is so nice for it to be like really specific. I have really specific goals, and we've got some tactical approaches this year. It's really exciting, and just having that direct connection with the people who are making this work possible is really awesome.
Yeah, there's something to be said about that the magic, really, when you get two people in a room talking, right? That will never be replaced. And thankfully, there's things that'll help augment. Think about reach. Someone in California can talk to someone in New York in instant on something like Facebook or by text. So there's that, but there's just something about grabbing those stories, the emotion, the rawness of in person, and that probably journalism from your background probably plays a really great role with that. From your perspective, so you come on board, and we'll focus on the USA stint now because you're a little bit into it now. You're getting your feet reacclimated. From a brand and really a fundraising growth perspective, what are some of the things that you're looking at from a metrics or a tracking standpoint when you're reporting that are serving as your initial kind of anchor point? And then how is that also like moving you to say, we need to be able to go X, Y, and Z, improve these, and how are we going to do that through brand communication and marketing? But we'll start with when you came on board, like what was your anchor point? What were you looking at from a measuring or metric perspective?
Yeah, so Hagar in the US is in an interesting place, So Hagar globally is pretty well known, in the international development and anti-trafficking sectors. It's known for its work, sustained good work over the years. And then you look at Hagar USA, and we've got a very small number following us on Instagram. A very small number following us on Facebook. The donor base that we do have is small but mighty. These are highly generous, really committed people who have bought into this mission and have been sustaining their support over the years. That's really, really remarkable. And yet I look at Hagar's work and I'm like, I just feel like so many more people would love to be a part of this. And so the metrics that we're looking at this year are seeing that expansion of our audience, seeing that increase, our audience and reach increase across our channels. So we've prioritized a few channels for this year: web, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. I know that's a lot for a very, very small team, but being able to focus and target in on those 4 channels allows us to just say no to the other things, and focus on like high quality content, really connecting with the people who are there and delivering some really meaningful and engaging stories. The other one that I'm looking at, it's retaining that critical donor base. If that critical donor base does not feel loved and does not feel engaged and does not understand how their gifts are creating a difference in the world, I have not succeeded this year. So we are tracking that retention of recurring and like retained donors over the years. And then we also have some revenue targets for individual giving and online giving this year. That's what we're certainly looking for. And looking at that M&R benchmarks report and the trends from last year, I'm like, oh no, but that's part of the challenge. We're all in this position, all of these nonprofits, we want to see revenue increase. And yet we do have some real challenges, for us. Those are the three metrics that I'm holding myself to.
That's great, and thank you for that insight. And yeah, the M&R reports are interesting. There's a few nuances, but overall, I don't yeah, it may be looking bleak, but the things you're talking about, you're doing the right things. And I sent an email out like last week. I found someone who was making a case of if you have a brand, and this is specifically talking to YouTube, we'll say entrepreneurs, this applies anywhere. If you have a brand that has 100 people following and they saw enough that they're engaging and following what you're posting, what you have to say, we'll call those sticky supporters. That community is going to be infinitely more valuable than a sheer number of, for lack of a better example, purchase followers on Instagram, or people that are clearly just clicking that like button on Facebook that will never interact or never provide any fundraising efforts or support. So for those nonprofits that are listening either right now or in the future, don't let your Facebook follower count or your follower subscriber count anywhere else dictate the importance of a channel. People are always going to go to email, but with email numbers declining, how else are you going to step in and fill that void? Facebook, even though it's declining, there's still probably the most amount of potential there for the majority of nonprofits. You think about Instagram and its continued efforts to push feature updates. If you haven't been on there lately, you could put on the donate to almost like a birthday fundraiser type of thing on your profile. You can link to stories, to fundraising aspects. LinkedIn is one I'm keeping tabs on personally. A lot of nonprofit professionals are on LinkedIn. It's where we do a lot of our effort and work. Just because that's, again, going to where our customers are. Same idea. We're working with their social impact team. We've got a couple cool things coming down the pipe with them, but I really think that we could see LinkedIn develop into something unique over the next 6 to 12 months, and they're putting effort and time into it. So similar to what you said, figure out what makes sense. Start backwards. I'm giving my takeaways too soon here. Figure out your business objectives and work your way backwards. If you're going to go do something, thanks, Rachel. If you're going to go do something, make sure it maps to your organizational goals. Otherwise, you're getting yourself into a pot of hot trouble. Not that I've ever been guilty of that in my early 20s. Okay. And we had a great quick question from Aaron here. I'm going to pop this up, Amie. How can we measure the value of those followers then, since only 30% of organic posts will be seen by them anyways? That's a really good question, something we end up dealing with quite a bit when it comes to the social engagement. Amie, did you want me to go first, or do you want to tag it and go from your perspective, and I'll bring the high level?
No, you go first.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it's a great thing. So for me, and the way I've always approached it, previous to my life at Good United, as well as now that I've gone through a year of crash course of how nonprofits should be looking about engagement. The value of a follower for me, it was largely seen as fluff in my B2B world, pre Good United, only because there was never a way to define and attribute our goals, which was revenue, to those likes, to those shares. I was never in a hot commodity brand where I could definitely correlate like a business to customer, like a Colgate toothpaste, or like using that as a litmus of getting people to buy. So that was my experience. Now in post Good United, it's less about the engagement, although that is important. You've seen like the Stop Soldier Suicide case study that we have, that literally the only point of using for our services in tandem with their team was to spread the news. And that just blew up. That was definitely has proven to be more of the outliers than the common case. But you think about, was it 240x engagement over literally 72 hours, resulted in 2,000 plus shares, hundreds of comments on a single post, just because they used Messenger to make a simple ask. And that's a key part of this. It's understanding the different components. Facebook Messenger is a big piece of that, where we've been going on and on about that, and internally in our blog for weeks and months now, about how that's going to start to shift, not only to provide a conversational path to those people that are subscribing, Facebook subscribers, similar to email subscribers, but then also sharing content. It's kind of this interesting middle ground between a super personal text message and a super impersonal broadcast email. It's where Messenger kind of sits. So, Aaron, to answer the question, it's hard, but the best way to think about it is relaying back to understanding who your subscribers on Facebook are, and then are those correlating to revenue. Start to work your way backwards in math. So you think about the total number of subscribers, divide that maybe by your total revenue. You start to understand that. So from that perspective, at a macro level, it's kind of been how I've seen the world with where we are. Amie, from your perspective, a little bit different, probably a little bit more micro in aspects. What would you say, how you take a look at engagement, and how does that translate to value of a follower?
Yeah, I've had to start thinking about value of followers less in dollars and cents and more in the awareness of the message that we're getting out there. And that's been helpful for me, because you're right. When we do look at organic posts and you see only a handful of your followers saw anything, it can be kind of demoralizing. And yet I do find that the routine process of continuing to do the work of clarifying our message, of putting good content out there, over time, I get smarter in the type of things that we're producing, more shareable things. Can I make a reel out of this instead of a static post? Which I will see immediate, huge jumps, like leaps in reach from that. And so I do think that the value of those supporters, it's some of that just time will tell, but the process, the due diligence itself of creating simple to understand, engaging content that educates, or whatever, it won't necessarily convert into donors, but it may be really highly shareable content that still gets this fundamental message out about Hagar. So that's how I see value generally in social media right now. I've had to disconnect it entirely from revenue.
Yeah, and that's not an uncommon story here too. And people love their short form video, let me tell you. So Aaron, also, like, to that point, you'll see so many stories of I always love my YouTube entrepreneurs who think they're going to land it big, because they do have a lot of valid points that content, they'll be getting similar engagement, 3-4% for months, and then one day it clicks. One day something happens, whether it's a 1 in a million viral video, or their community grows to the point where you're resonating with them. You're providing valuable content, not a mass amount. No need to just throw as much as you can, hop on Canva and go crazy every day. But if you make effort to produce the content, again, going back to understanding what your supporters want, conversations, imagine using that to fill your content is where I found the most success. And then you start to see what we refer to, or what I refer to as kind of your demand creation or your demand capture, similar in the fundraising aspect. People want to support your brand as you continue to focus and hone the content you're delivering, as well as the brand voice. And thanks so much for that question, Aaron. Which brings me up to another interesting point here, is the brand voice. Amie, I've gone through with some phenomenal teammates over the last 6 to 8 months to refine, and we continue to evolve Good United's brand. So I know what it takes from this side of the fence. For you, stepping into Hagar USA, what did that brand voice look like in the guidelines? Is that something that you had to work off of, or are you reimagining that as you go and figuring it out? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, I am in. It's great. It's very exciting. It's a very exciting time to be at Hagar, where Hagar is, if we were a generation, we'd be a millennial, so like 30 years old, born in 1994. Big rebrand done in like 2011. And now we are at this place where we get to reimagine the next years, And so while there's some things that are set in stone, there are others that aren't.
Dang it, I dropped again. I missed all of that. I am just having problems all over the place, Amie.
No
So I'm assuming you had something good there. I'll go rewatch that on demand right after this. Can you give me a 10-second recap? Did you step into that brand, or are you evolving that as you go?
So it's both and. There is a brand for Hagar, but it is also time for a refresh. And so at this juncture in the States, we're starting to reimagine, how is it through the lens of simplicity and through the lens of all the tech that we have at our disposal, through the lens of we're in 2023, we're post-COVID, all this kind of stuff. Um, how do we communicate this really important work? How do we do it? And so we're figuring it out a little bit as we go and taking the time to have some of those conversations about who we really are and how to communicate that in its most simple way.
That's perfect. And I, having gone through this and out the other side, if there's one thing I can recommend about a rebrand is plan time for this. We gave ourselves maybe 6 to 7 months here. We wanted to time it around. Thought this grand idea of, hey, or we launch a brand new website, introduce a brand new brand visuals and voice, and we'll do this same week as peer-to-peer forum. Not smart. I think we almost collapsed in ourselves of just sheer exhaustion as a team, but it turned out okay in the end. Amie, from your perspective then, as I pull up some slides here, hopefully my internet hangs on. What are you thinking about as we look to wrap things up in terms of just where do you start? There's a lot of nonprofits that we end up working with that just are unsure where to even begin, let alone what to do or what to start with today. What does that look like?
Yeah, I think what I'm doing, rightly or wrongly, but it is returning back to your takeaway message. It's what are your organization's goals? What are the tactics that are and strategies that are going to get there? And just zone in on those and let the other things fall away. And that's what I've had to do. I mean, I'm a one-person show in communications and small donor fundraising at Hagar. We're a very small team. We have lots of challenges ahead of us, but the flip side of every challenge is an opportunity too. And so every day what I'm having to think through is, does this really matter? Okay, if I do this, then I'm not doing that. So what really matters? And simplify, both the tactics in getting somewhere, but also key messaging, honing it down, really thinking about the essence of each message, and then pursuing those things, pursuing 3 things really, really well and with excellence. Knowing your donor and your focused audience in mind is going to have far more return than, spray and pray, like you said earlier, Adam. So that's where and I have to be gentle with myself. Again, I can't be comparing myself to massive organizations, that have had, huge exponential growth. We're in a different place than that, and that's okay. And I don't believe any longer in there being silver bullets. And I think that just makes me do the diligent work every single day of producing things with excellence.
Yeah, you're so right, and it's one of the things I try, especially it's similar. I have a small team. I've got myself and then one other core teammate here. Is will this matter or leave an impact today, tomorrow, a month from now, quarter from now, a year from now, 10 years from now? If it's 10-year impact, then yeah, you could bet on prioritizing that. Whereas if this only matters in a microsecond, is this really worth devoting very precious time? So I'm with you on that one. Another thing too that we live by is planning, which goes along with simplify. You can't simplify your life if you're not planning. That is so fantastic. For me, what can you do today? I said it earlier, but I'll say it again. Understand your organization's goals, then work backwards. Everyone's trying to get more revenue through fundraising. It's just a given. There's also sub goals within that: new leads, new traffic to the website, so on and so forth. But if you're going to, especially as marketing or fundraising leaders, going to try and map your goals and your key objectives to that is not in line with the main overarching goals, you're going to find yourself in some trouble really quick. Things to be thinking about, though, as you try and measure the impact of brand, whether you're starting out, whether you're considering or implementing new brand, or whether you're post-brand launch or you're just maintaining. If you're thinking about what in the world do I do, how do I tie some of this metrics to value to the business or the nonprofit organization, leading indicators, website traffic. I know for us, we're looking at a 2-year period to understand when we launched, we'll say mid-February this year, and what we're doing and scaling up. There's a lot that goes into that continued website traffic, but it gives us to understand that, hey, at least we're on par, and then we're improving, and here's how we're doing it. There's a lot of the SEO aspect that we're managing more intently now. A lot goes into that traffic than just general traffic, but getting snapshots over periods of, for us, it's quarters, it's easiest to understand. That's a great start. Social media engagement is tricky, but it's also could be a very easy leading indicator to understand that, hey, if we're trying something new, maybe it's scaling back on the amount of content, but focusing on quality. Is that more engaging? Likes, shares, comments. Over time, does that consistently trail up or does it trail down? These are the things you want to be thinking about as you're trying to gain some sort of litmus or understanding of the impact that brand changes or brand improvements or enhancements, however you want to define it, has on your overall short-term goals. Now, the lagging indicators, lead conversion or supporter conversion, whether it be on Facebook through a fundraiser, whether it be on your website as a fundraiser or everywhere in between, that's a very good indication. If you see a steady incline after change is made, you know something is doing right. Messaging, the brand visuals, the awareness, thinking about, we even touch on earned versus paid media and how that works to get your brand further promoted. Also fundraising revenue, like that's an easy one. That's the top line that I believe we're all chasing and trying to measure against. Look at that either in quarters, or if that's too long, months, weeks, probably not days. It's going to drive you crazy. I've fallen in that trap as a marketer way too many times. So take it from me. Don't do that. But try and give yourself some grace too, and understanding that there are dips and dives. It will not always be an uphill ascent. It will have its valleys where you have to learn, and it's not just to set it and forget it. Didn't have it right down here, but like really it's like a house plant. You got to continue watering and paying attention in order for that to fully bloom and really grow into something special. For me, that's my takeaways. I'm going to leave a few minutes here, Amie, if you're cool with it. If anyone has any Q&A, I haven't seen anything else pop up besides Aaron's. But I do have to say, from your perspective, Amie, how can the people here or watching in the future, how can we help support you and your mission at Hagar from here on out? What does that look like? What are you shooting for to support you all the best?
Oh, if you want to follow us on our social media channels, that'd be awesome. I end up following on my own personal channels and then through Hagar's as well, a lot of other nonprofit, channels. And it's, we really are all in this together. I don't think that a scarcity mindset is going to help anyone else out. But if there's ways that we can be shouting out, reposting really good content, sharing our learnings with each other, I think we're the lucky ones, Hagar's website is hagarusa.org if you want to learn more about our work. We've just transformed our giving experience as well, using a new platform. And something that's actually really, really helpful for me is feedback. Since we work with such a small team, we've got a small committed group of donors. If you see weird stuff on my site, I would really, really, really love your feedback. Let me know, and I'll fix it.
Perfect. I've got the Facebook link up here too for you. That's facebook.com/HagarUSA. What we didn't touch on, I had a question that I'd stashed away too regarding Facebook giving tools. It's been a whole saga for so many nonprofits this year, and even before 2023 rolled in. Good old fun times with some California legislation, specifically. For those who are unfamiliar with what's going on, there's some legislation around how fundraising should be handled in California. I'll save you the details. You can find it on our blog. But it resulted in Facebook or Meta itself being very strict in terms of how it it basically allowed nonprofits to continue to have access to giving tools, oftentimes getting shut off if there was violations of 3 specific government lists for nonprofits, all centered around filing paperwork properly and in time. So California Franchise Tax Board, the IRS, and similar. Y'all are still kind of working through that, correct, Amie? If I'm not mistaken, I just took a quick look, and it seems like we're still working to get that back up and running. What's that been like? Did you step into that?
Yeah, like just in the middle of it. We sort of had thought that everything was fine. And then I started exploring boosting posts, adding the giving tools, and realizing, oh, we've got a real problem here. We're one of the organizations that's gotten really in trouble. And so we're still resolving that, but the intention is to begin using Facebook tools, throughout the rest of this year. So yeah, it's just one priority issue.
One thing at a time, too, I'm sure, is amongst of everything else you're working to suss through. And that's a topic that we'll be touching on in our Facebook bootcamp, fundraising bootcamp out on June 8th. If y'all want to jump onto that one, we've got roughly about 100 more spots saved up for that one. That'll be a really great one to touch on a lot of the aspects of how to sign up for giving tools, how to run Facebook challenges, what to do with birthday fundraisers, what to do or how to access nonprofit manager. A lot of question marks from our last NGL that are carrying over into this. So we're going to answer that directly, as well as, some of the gaps in the M&R benchmarks around stats about challenges, about birthday fundraisers, about Facebook Messenger and how to use that best. We're actually working to kind of fill in that gap. So we're introducing the first kind of beta version of that, our own benchmarks in that event too. So if you want access to that, jump on. We'll officially release it in probably the first week of July to everyone that would find that valuable. Okay, Amie, I have not seen anything else come over, so you might be getting off the hook lucky here. From the entire Good United team, thank you for joining us. It's always such a pleasure to connect with you. And today's no different. Our entire team loves you and adores you. I know you worked with Colin, specifically on our growth team, through some of the pilot testing with Facebook giving tools previously, and that's how we got hooked up. I love the work that you're doing. Continue to support you in any way that we can here at Good United, as well as for those listening or watching. Jump on, give them a like. Amie, is the best way to connect with you on LinkedIn these days?
Yes, that's a great way. Yeah.
Perfect. We have that hyperlinked in all the emails. I'll make sure to include that on the follow-up email to you all too as well. Amie, again, thank you for all the work that you're doing with more people like you and the people already on your team. It makes the world a little bit safer place, especially as a dad who has a daughter and a small son, knowing that there are people working to eliminate the fear of slavery where that exists, which is far too many places.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an awesome conversation. Appreciate all of you and Adam particularly. Take care. Have a great day. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks. All right. Y'all have a great one. We'll see you on the next Nonprofit Growth Lab or any of the digital events that we have coming up. Otherwise, have a great one, and we'll see you soon.